Traditional patinas for cold cast bronze and copper. Today we're going to show how to create a traditional patina over a cold cast resin part. Now, anytime you're cold casting and using a reactive patina, it's a good idea to do your casting into a silicone mold, and that prevents any release agents later on from inhibiting a patina reaction. Now to begin, we'll need some Easy Flow resin. Here we're using Easy Flow 60, and some measuring cups, and metal powder, and polycolor pigment. Now the ratio of metal powder is really important. You don't want to use so much metal powder that it's too thick to be unworkable, but you also don't want to use too little metal powder that you don't get a good reaction later on with your acid patina. So we're going to start off with 1 part of A, 1 part of B, and roughly 1.5 parts metal powder. And we can go as much as 2 parts metal powder, but you don't want to go too heavy on the metal powder to make it too thick. And again, you don't want to use too little metal powder and not get a reaction. So here we're going right in the middle and using about 1.5 parts metal powder to 1 part A to 1 part B. Now for this cold cast process, we'll be using Easy Flow 60 casting resin. Now Easy Flow 60 normally cures bright white, so we're going to add some polycolor black and add that to the part B, and that gives us kind of a gray color as a background to our cold cast. That way, if we have any spots where we don't get good coverage of our metal powder, we don't see bright white plastic showing through. Now once we've measured out our components, we're ready to stir them all together. And to do that, I always like to first pour out my A and B components. And you notice I'm scraping out each little Dixie cup there very carefully. We want to make sure we incorporate all of that in the mixture so we don't get off ratio by accident. So make sure you scrape all of your containers out really well. And once you've combined the parts A and B, you're ready to stir in your metal powder. And it's a good idea to use a slow, deliberate stirring motion so that you don't slosh out that resin or the metal powder when it's kind of difficult to mix together at first. So start slowly at first and then speed up gradually. And that's a good way to make sure you get a good mixture of your metal powder and your polyurethane resin. Now you'll notice that even with the mixture of copper powder and resin, that we still have a very pourable consistency. And that allows us 2 options in our casting process. We can either slosh this around in the mold, and that'd be more applicable if we had a 3-dimensional part like a head bust or something like that. But for a relief piece or a small part like this, a flat back part, sometimes it's easier to go in with a throwaway brush like this and brush it into the detailed areas of the part. Now Easy Flow 60 has a fast working time of 2.5 minutes, so you need to move quick. And before the part has completely cured, I like to go and backfill it with solid resin or rigid foam. In this case, we're just going to back it up with solid Easy Flow 60 with a little bit of black pigment to give us kind of a gray background color. But if you're doing really large pieces, large architectural elements, or large sculptures, sometimes it's a good idea to use rigid casting foam, and that way you have large parts that have a very light weight and are easy to glue together later on. Now once the backfilled resin cures, we're ready to demold our parts, and you'll notice the flashing pulls away very easily to reveal our nice cold cast copper pieces. And now we're ready to take them Indiana Jones style out to Sculpt Nouveau headquarters in beautiful San Diego, California. And once at Sculpt Nouveau headquarters, we consulted the patina master himself, Ron Young. And I'd like to thank Ron for letting us film in his studio and for showing us these steps that are crucial to a successful reactive patina over a cold cast metal piece. Now here, Ron recommends a light sandblasting over the surface of a cold cast piece like this. And this step is key to getting a good reaction with a traditional patina. Now sandblasting accomplishes 2 things. It gives you a nice matte surface to work with, and it also exposes the metal powder. Now we're going to do a basic patina, and then we're going to do a slightly more advanced patina. Here we're just spraying on the light green patina. This is just the traditional green patina, just so you can see the difference in what happens with the sandblasting. If we had done this over a regular part, just straight out of the mold, we would have gotten a very minimal reaction. But here, after we let this part sit for a day, we get a very rich light green patina. Now at this point, to add to the realism of our piece, we're going to use some 4/0 steel wool and pull back the high points and just expose some more of that copper powder to give it that realistic aged look of old copper. Now to prevent rust from forming, after you're done with this step, blow off any leftover steel wool with an air hose. And now our piece is ready to be sealed with a protective lacquer. And you'll notice that when you spray on that lacquer here, we're using the ClearGuard satin. It darkens temporarily, and then once it dries out, our original color returns. Now for our second piece, we're going to do a little more complicated patina. We're going to do a berry patina that's found in Ron Young's new book, The Contemporary Patination, 2nd edition. Now for this patina, we're actually going to submerge the part in wood chips, or actually bury it, hence the name of berry patina or buried patina. And we're going to saturate the wood chips with vinegar and ammonia. Now there are a lot of color variations possible with this patina depending on the amount of ammonia or vinegar that you use, or the type of wood chips you use, or whether or not you allow air into the 5-gallon pail when you're using this technique. So I would definitely recommend getting the book and looking at several of those processes, because there's a lot of variables that can achieve some dramatically different color effects. Now before we submerge our part, we're going to spray it with the light green patina and get a good saturation of that all over our part. And once we've done that, before it has a chance to dry out, we're going to submerge that or bury that in the wood chips. Now for this particular patina, we wanted a very aggressive oxide to form. And to do that, we submerge that in the wood chips and snap the lid back in place and let our part sit in the wood chips for a full day. Now the amount of time you leave the piece buried in the wood chips will determine how rich of a reaction you get. And there are a lot of variables you can play with there, the different concentrations of ammonia or vinegar. But once you've got it to the point where you like the colors, you're ready to use a soft brush to knock away any of the leftover wood chips. And now you're ready to either pull back the high points like we did earlier with some steel wool, or if you like the piece just as it is, you can seal it with some ClearGuard matte sealer. And the matte sealer preserves that finish without adding any kind of shine. And there you have a traditional patina over a cold cast piece using copper powder in this case. And of course, all of the patina supplies and cold casting supplies and Ron's new patina book are all available on our web store at brickintheyard.com.